Good evening. Welcome to our POOIA Professional Organization of Iranian American monthly lecture series. First and foremost, I would like to extend my profound appreciation and gratitude to our learned scholar, well-known academician, and distinguished speaker, Dean James LaPlant, for whose presence I am monumentally appreciative to Dr. Bahram Ojati, one of our POOIA board members and an eminent professor at Val Vista State University. For those who do not know what POOIA is, I am going to give a brief explanation. POOIA stands for Professional Organization of Iranian Americans, predominantly in Atlanta, and it's an affiliate of Kanoon, and it's a non-religious, non-political, and purely an independent organization which has monthly lectures by scholars in different sciences to give us a wide spectrum of different sciences in addition to humanities and cultural topics glorifying our country, Iran. Our lectures are in English so that the American and international professionals and young Iranian Americans who unfortunately do not know Farsi be able to participate. In addition to this, every year, POOIA has an annual gala giving awards to some brilliant Iranian students from different fields, from different universities. Our next gala will be on January 24, 2026, and at this time, I cordially invite Dean LaPlant to join us for that event. POOIA works tirelessly to uphold the pillars of its mission. Number one, to create a sense of synergy within population of Iranian Americans. Number two, to enhance and ensure the growth of and professional success of our Iranian people by recognizing their accomplishments. Number three, to provide other forms of advice, such as internships, career counseling, financial support in a few cases, etc., to support our young professionals. Number four, to promote a positive image and counter the negative media of depiction of Iran and Iranian people via our cultural lectures, which are available on pcc.com. In short, POOIA is about all of us together as a professional and diverse community with a mission to help our communities and manifest the right image of our proud identity, our glorious culture, and our monumental achievements through our monthly lectures and annual gala. With these goals and aspirations in mind, we strongly encourage all Iranian professionals from all walks of life to attend our lectures, events, and support us. We'll briefly introduce our eminent scholars. James LaPlant is the Dean of the College of Humanities and Social Sciences and Professor of Political Science at Val Vista State University. He received his PhD in political science from the University of Oklahoma and is currently serving as president of the Council on Undergraduate Research, CUR, which is a national organization that promotes undergraduate research in higher education. He has served for 6 years as the editor-in-chief of SCUR, Scholarship and Practice of Undergraduate Research. Dean LaPlant has recently taught courses on research methods in political science, Southern culture and politics, and conspiracy theories in American politics. His research has dealt with topics ranging from policy diffusion to Southern politics to conspiracy theories in American politics. He has led study abroad trips to the Czech Republic, He has published numerous articles in various journals and supervised many undergraduate and graduate students in research related to the field of political science. Dr. Dean LaPlant, it is truly an honor for us to have you as a speaker tonight. On behalf of Kanoon and on behalf of POOIA, I thank you, immensely for having accepted our invitation, and I please start to know why we are interested in conspiracy theory. We are all here. Please start.
Well, thank you. Again, I am very grateful for all of you joining us tonight, and I've been looking forward to this. I think ever since the spring when Dr. Hojati mentioned it to me, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the invitation. So if I bore you tonight, or if I lose your interest, then I have done something horribly wrong, because my topic is why we believe in conspiracy theories, right? What is our fascination with conspiracy theories? And so let me share my screen at this stage for everyone. And so hopefully you're able to see my screen. And I've been teaching a course, oh my gosh, probably for 20 years now. I've been teaching a course on conspiracy theories in American politics. And my really bad joke is that I'm just going to call it American politics, right? It doesn't need the descriptor, conspiracy theories in American politics. I can just call it American politics, because American politics is now conspiracy theories. And so that's great for my class. That is awesome for my class. Maybe not so good for democracy and the future of our society. But we'll talk about that a little later. So again, thank you for having me. I teach research methods on the one hand and conspiracy theories on the other. So we'll figure out what the connection is between regression analysis, time series analysis, and believing in conspiracy theories, because I will argue that there actually is a connection, if you will, to that. So obviously with conspiracy theories, right? I mean, it's an attempt to explain events as the secretive plots of powerful people, right? It's this really profound view that a very secretive group of people run the world, and it can run the gamut, right? In terms of is that group extraterrestrial? Is that group interdimensional? Is that group bankers? Is that group financiers? I mean, it runs the gamut from international organizations to global leaders to David Icke. I don't know if you've ever read his stuff. That's probably good if you haven't. David Icke argues that 7-foot-tall interdimensional lizards run the planet. I mean, it is just crazy, right? I mean, it's just, it runs the gamut from slightly crazy to, I guess, extremely crazy would be the point that I want to make. And of course, I gave you some of the most powerful symbols of secretive societies, from the Illuminati to the all-seeing eye, the Masonic lodges, which, by the way, Masons, Freemasons do really great work, especially charity work. And it is incredible how powerful those conspiracy theories have been about Masonic lodges for centuries. Well, oh my gosh, I don't have to tell anyone in this session about how powerful conspiracy theories were during the pandemic, right? I mean, the pandemic, the global pandemic, was like a steroid injection into beliefs in conspiracy theories, right? COVID-19 was created by the government and released upon the population. And as probably many of you know, what is one of the most powerful themes of conspiracy theories for thousands of years? Depopulation, or controlling populations, right? I mean, it is fascinating that since the ancient Greeks and Romans up to the present, especially the last several centuries, depopulation, controlling the population, is a big theme of conspiracy thinking. So when you have a lot of deaths from the pandemic, as tragic as that was, it fuels conspiracy thinking. One of my favorite conspiracy theories, because it's just so loony, especially for my engineers that are with us, that COVID-19 was caused by 5G technology and cell phone towers. So here is your culprit for COVID. Also, the vaccines contain microchips, so the government can monitor you. Just a silly personal story. My wife the other day, I think my wife got a COVID booster. Well, this was before Secretary Kennedy's latest actions in Health and Human Services, but I'll not go down that rabbit hole. But I think my wife got a COVID booster. She got her shingles shot and then the flu shot. And I said, darling, you're full of like 30 microchips right now. I mean, I was joking, but she said, stop that. So she didn't. My wife didn't find that amusing, but I thought it was slightly amusing. So obviously during the pandemic, oh my goodness, so many crazy conspiracy theories. Well, the classic conspiracy theories, right? And let's be honest, we are all drawn to conspiracy theories because they're entertaining, they're amusing. Some of them make you think, well, maybe there's a little truth to that. So the USA never landed on the moon. It was faked. Everybody, is it fair to say, I think every one of us has somebody in our family who probably believes we never went to the moon. And the more beer or wine or spirits they drink, the more convinced they are at dinner, and they'll tell you we never went to the moon. So we went to the moon. NASA issued numerous reports about this, right? But doesn't that show the power of conspiracy theories, that NASA issued numerous reports that, hey, public, we actually did go to the moon. Oh my gosh, let's talk about the 9/11 conspiracy theories, right? It was an inside job. It was a controlled demolition of the World Trade Center. A cruise missile was shot into the Pentagon. We shot down that plane over Pennsylvania. Again, powerful conspiracy theory. And we'll talk later about this, that 9/11 was an inside job. Oh, one of my favorites, and I appreciate that this was on the flyer. So thank you for putting me next to aliens because I loved it. The US government is covering up evidence of aliens and spaceships. And then President Kennedy, of course, what was the mother of all conspiracy theories? That JFK was assassinated in Dealey Plaza. And I didn't put this on the slide, but there's a really powerful argument that the Kennedy assassination was the democratization of conspiracy theories. And what I mean by that, everybody became an expert on the Kennedy assassination. And this is before the internet, right? I mean, whether they were a mechanic, a hairdresser, a college professor, a teacher, a bus driver, you see what I'm saying? Everybody had an opinion on the Kennedy assassination, and they might have even looked at the Warren Commission report, or they looked at newspaper reports. Now, again, this is before the internet, that everybody feels like I can research this. I can look at the Zapruder film over and over, and I can look at the grassy knoll. And the internet is now steroids for the democratization of conspiracy thinking. Of course, beyond kind of our classic conspiracy theories, I wanted to make an important point, and I want to attribute my sources. This comes from Catherine Olmsted, who has written a great book on the history of conspiracy theories in the United States. But what fascinates me is from the founding of this republic to World War I and World War II, what were conspiracy theories focused on? External threats, the Pope, the Vatican, the Illuminati, the Freemasons, European governments, right? But for much of American history, conspiracy theories were focused on the external threat, that our government was like a little lamb or a little sheep at risk of being devoured by these external evil forces. My friends, this changed dramatically with the world wars. And this is huge and so relevant for today. After World War I, but my goodness, after World War II, who became the conspirator? The United States government, right? And that was very different than most of American history, where our little innocent lamb-like government was at risk. After World War I, especially after World War II and the Cold War, it was our government that was the evil conspirator. And oh, that is so true in the 21st century. It's so true today. Well, why? Again, I know you all are well-versed in your history, but a couple of reasons we should look at. The massive growth in the federal government. the explosion in the national security state. And let's be blunt, the level of surveillance and spying upon American citizens by its own government, as well as suppressing dissent, all of these things do what? They lead to a belief that the government is the conspirator, right? So the national security state, spying upon American citizens, suppressing dissent, the huge rise of all things national security has led to this. And right, there's no more powerful example. There's no clearer example that the government is the conspirator. The government is this really evil force than what? 9/11. That the government could do this, the government could engage in such evil, that thousands of people were brought to their death. Now, again, folks, this is the same government that we are so wildly distrustful of, that we wonder why they can't get ice delivered to disaster areas after a hurricane, right? But yet this is the same government we're willing to attribute incredible evil sophistication to carry out 9/11. It's kind of fascinating, right? It's kind of a fascinating paradox that we distrust government, find it so wickedly incompetent, yet we think that they could orchestrate and carry out what? 9/11. Or could I add, they blew up the levees during Hurricane Katrina, right? I mean, what happened in Katrina was a failure of government at all levels, right? And as a political scientist, government failed us at all levels during Katrina, but nobody detonated the levees. Yet we'll talk about why that conspiracy theory was so wildly popular. So my friends, when I teach this course, when I lecture on it, I kind of like to emphasize the big eight. I mean, we could spend all night long talking about the historic causes of conspiracy thinking. But to me, this is, I think, one of the more important slides that I wanted to just kind of emphasize with you. And I've kind of bolded those items. First of all, and I know it's really obvious, but distrusting government, right? So from Vietnam to Watergate to Iran-Contra, as we are increasingly distrustful in government, we're more likely to what? Believe in conspiracy theories. Secondly, one of the most troubling developments with the pandemic was what? Declining trust in science. And so as trust in science declines, so grows conspiracy thinking. Feelings of isolation. I mean, this was so worrisome during the pandemic, right? Stay-at-home orders, an inability to see your friends or family and go to restaurants. Social isolation led to a massive growth in conspiracy thinking. QAnon, the insane conspiracy theories of QAnon flourished during the pandemic when we were so socially isolated. I know I state the obvious, but the internet and social media are huge drivers of conspiracy thinking. And then, let's be very blunt, actual government conspiracies fuel our conspiracy culture. All of our attempts to assassinate Fidel Castro, and many of you may have read about this. I mean, the assassination attempts on Fidel Castro were almost comical. Exploding cigars. We tried to lace his scuba diving equipment with tuberculosis. He was a diver. We were going to one of the reefs that Fidel would dive to. We were going to put explosives there. I say we, I wasn't part of this, but this was the grand scheme of the CIA. Of course, the United States government has assassinated foreign leaders. We have toppled foreign governments, right? I mean, Iran-Contra. I mean, Iran-Contra was a fascinating, elaborate government conspiracy, right? I mean, it was. And so was Watergate to another degree. So when government does bad things, it of course feeds conspiracy theories. And then political polarization, which I wanted to spend some time on, kind of the 2 P's here, or the 3 P's. Yeah, 3 P's, political polarization and populism. Holy cow. Or as my mother would say, holy wah, holy wah. I'm not sure what that meant, but holy wah. Political polarization and populism, in my own research, I'll show you later, those are huge drivers of conspiracy thinking. And then fears of immigration. Oh my gosh. If we look at American history, and I really try to emphasize this in my class, that throughout American history, and this is fascinating, but deeply troubling, if you look throughout American history, and I should have given you a graph on this, so I'll use my silly hand, but When conspiracy thinking goes up and declines, and when it goes up and declines, when it goes up and declines, my friends, what does that track with? It tracks with waves of immigration. In American history, when immigration rises, conspiracy thinking does what? It rises hand in glove. As immigration declines, we sometimes see or often see conspiracy thinking abating. So that is a fascinating and troubling connection. And then, of course, globalization. You know, that what? Fluctuations in the Asian stock market can impact your retirement fund, your 401k. It impacts your mortgage. It impacts your job, right? I mean, all these fears of globalization, such a complex, interconnected economy, conspiracy theories rise in that globalization. So, of course, and many of you, I'm sure, are thinking of other factors, but for me, that distrust in government, growing distrust in science, these feelings of isolation, we just bury ourselves in the internet and social media, actual government conspiracies, polarization, populism, and then fears of immigration and globalization, right? Those are really huge drivers, really significant drivers in why we believe in conspiracy theories. Well, why should we care? And I'm sorry to say, you know, for the health of our democracy, this has powerfully been on display the last several years. What is happening is that conspiracy theories can fuel violence. We need to look no further than what? The January 6th insurrection at the US Capitol in 2021. Also, you know what troubles me? And I'm fascinated, I'm troubled too, but I'm fascinated by the growing percentage of Americans who say they will resort to violence or would resort to violence to achieve their political goals, right? So that grows with conspiracy thinking. This willingness to use violence to achieve your goals can rise with conspiracy thinking. Well, of course, I state the obvious. There are way too many historical examples, but conspiracy thinking is often used for what? Suppressing racial groups, religious groups. Conspiracy theories can what? Fuel genocide. Again, this is why we must care. Conspiracy theories give us a really distorted view of reality. Again, the whole QAnon movement. We could talk about that, I suppose, all night long. But right, this idea that the Democratic Party or Democratic politicians, or just set aside the Democratic Party or Republican Party, just this belief that you know, the rich and powerful are drinking blood or murdering children or whatever. These are conspiracy theories that give us a very distorted view of reality. Also, I mean, look, I state the obvious, but I mean, American government is built upon pluralism, right? From the founding of this republic today, American government is built upon pluralism, the interaction of all the beautiful groups in our society, the diversity in our society. Folks, pluralism only works if we do what? Bargain, compromise, and negotiate. I mean, I think that's my very first lecture in Introduction to American Government, right? We are a system of pluralism. We only function if we bargain, compromise, and negotiate. Well, if you are a dyed-in-the-wool conspiracy theorist, you, of course, cannot compromise, right? You can't bargain or negotiate because reality is good and evil, and we are progressing towards a greater evil, and evil has the upper hand, and you must not bargain, you must not compromise, you must not negotiate. So again, these are all the reasons why I say we must care, and this, I think, is a very timely and important topic. So, of course, disinformation and misinformation are key factors. I mean, the textual definition I just wanted to hammer home, right, is that, I mean, disinformation is false information deliberately spread to deceive people, right? I mean, false information is knowingly and intentionally spread to cause damage and harm. And conspiracy theories will do nicely, right? Conspiracy theories fit the bill. There is also misinformation, right? Just run-of-the-mill false information that is spread. But I mean, the intent is not necessarily to lie to you or to deceive you. It could be based upon what? Ignorance, lack of knowledge. My joke is that it's the kind of things my mother forwards. Do you have this from your family members? Like, oh, Jamie, she still calls me Jamie. Jamie, you better look at this. I'm like, Mom, this is totally not true. She goes, no, I think it's true. I think this is exactly what's going on in whatever conspiracy might be promoted. So, I mean, there's misinformation, but then there's kind of the more insidious, if you will, disinformation. And we've seen that. I mean, Russian campaigns have been brilliant at this, Chinese government campaigns. We also do it, right? I mean, let's be honest, we do it too. So, and so when we are looking at misinformation and disinformation, well, of course, right, social media and the internet play a huge role. I mean, they allow disinformation and misinformation to flourish. I used to have a little Twitter symbol on there. I'm having a hard time getting adjusted to X as the new name for Twitter, but right, X, or what used to be Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. And now many of you may be aware of this, but holy cow, or holy wah, as my mom loved to say, here's what fascinates me. If you have ever been on YouTube and you call up a conspiracy theory video, or whatever you want to call it, have you seen where it'll give you a menu? Hey, if you like that video, look at this one. If you like that video, look at this one, right? So there's an algorithm that will, quite frankly, take you even further down the rabbit hole. And this, we saw this proliferate across society during the pandemic. And so again, these algorithms are essentially built to feed you what you're interested in, even if it ain't healthy for you, right? Even if it ain't healthy for you at all, it will feed you a Thanksgiving feast of conspiracy theories through channels like YouTube. And my students are well aware of this. I mean, they know they're being manipulated, but they're like, Dr. LaPlant, I can't stop watching those videos. I just love the videos. I'm like, well, you're being taken down a rabbit hole. So again, we talked a little bit earlier about this. I mean, disinformation and misinformation. It was so prevalent during the pandemic, right? That, the vaccines cause sterility, or the vaccines are full of microchips. We saw a tremendous amount of disinformation and misinformation. The 2020 election, big lie, which I think journalists aptly called it the big lie, that the election was stolen, or there were one of my favorite conspiracy theories is that there were Chinese bamboo ballots. It just makes me laugh. Chinese bamboo ballots that somehow worked their way into our election process, or thousands and thousands of dead people voted. I mean, folks, there was a fascinating study by UCLA, our dear friends at the University of California at Los Angeles. They looked at, I don't know, a decade of election results. I mean, folks, they looked at something like 1 billion ballots. And you know what they found? I don't think I need both hands to count the number of voter fraud cases. Literally, right? Because, a couple 100 million people vote in each presidential election, right? And so if you look at a couple years of elections, you got about 1 billion ballots, and you have a handful, an absolute handful. I mean, you're more likely to get hit by lightning and bit by a shark at the same time than you are to ever see voting fraud in your life, right? So let me repeat. You're more likely to get hit by lightning and bit by a shark at the same time in Florida, because those things happen together in Florida. I'm joking. They separately happen in Florida. But that's more likely to happen to you than ever see a voter fraud or witness it. Hey, the Russians have been masters of planting false news stories. You know what I'm fascinated by? Where did the conspiracy theories arise that Lyndon Baines Johnson killed JFK, or that the CIA killed JFK? You know where those conspiracy theories originated? European newspapers planted by the Soviet Union. So the Soviets, for half a century, 60 years now, have been masters of planting these conspiracy theories in newspapers. Obviously, the goal is to divide us, to inflame us. I mean, you could argue it's kind of working pretty well. And again, it works against pluralism. As we are divided, it makes it more difficult to, of course, bargain, compromise and negotiate. Well, so I said I was worried about the 3 Ps: political, polarization, populism. And again, I'm sure you're aware of this. Hey, visual graphics always help me. I mean, low polarization in American politics is when the parties are overlapping here in my diagram. So if you think of the Democratic Party in blue, that's not quite red, but let's say it's a red for the Republican Party. When the parties overlap ideologically, they not all, but they share some ideas, they share some agenda items. That's low polarization, and we've had that certainly in much of the 20th century, many key periods of the 20th century. Well, we're not there now, right? I mean, we are in a period of high polarization where the parties are pulling apart, right? Not a lot of overlap. The parties have done what's called self-sorting, right? The Democrats, conservative Democrats, are largely gone. Liberal Republicans, who used to be in the upper Midwest and New England, they've largely gone extinct like a dinosaur. And so the parties have sorted themselves out ideologically. And again, when there's not much overlap in policy positions or ideology, this is where you're at. An era where conspiracy thinking can thrive in that gap. So the gap between the parties is where it can thrive. And my friends, as a political scientist, what worries me is most voters are in the middle, right? Let's be blunt. Most Americans are in the middle, but they feel alienated, disengaged. Maybe they don't like either party. They don't maybe follow politics that closely. So you have this great middle that's disengaged. You probably see this. I mean, I have a lot of friends who say, well, I can't even be on Facebook anymore, or I have a difficult time having conversations over dinner with somebody who's of the other political party because I feel like they believe my party is an existential threat to the future of this country, but I believe their party is an existential threat to the future of this country, right? So suspicion and distrust thrives when you view the other party as a threat to the future of the nation. And this is kind of whimsical, but maybe it's not that funny. I wanted to include that recent research indicates that Democratic parents, so if mom and dad are Democrats, they absolutely do not want their children marrying a Republican. And if mom and dad are Republicans, they don't want their kids at all dating or marrying Democrats. I mean, it makes me chuckle. I mean, probably also kind of sad, but it's it's where we're at. Although I must admit, my grandson was born a year ago, to share a little personal story. And my daughter, I love my daughter because she's my daughter, but they took my grandson to like a Democratic Socialist Party meeting. Now he's 1 year old. And I'm like, whoa. You went from 0 to 100 miles per hour before the kid is a year old. Why don't you start with like the Rotary Club or take him to the Kiwanis or something? But the Democratic Socialist Party, he's not even a year old. What is going on? But you know what? I shut my mouth because I'm a grandparent. I'm just supposed to buy gifts, I guess, and not comment on how he's raised. Well, this map, you all know, right? This is probably emblazoned in your brain. This is the 2020 presidential election. I mean, it's the same for 2024. You know what fascinates me about geographic polarization? When I show this to students from other countries, and of course, a red county is what? That voted Republican in the 2020 presidential election. So red, Trump won that county. Blue, Biden won that county. But, my students are like, oh, America is all red, right? America is totally Republican. I'm like, well, actually, we're pretty evenly split. The last several elections have shown that. Look at the House of Representatives, how close it is. And you all know this. I mean, most Americans, or not most, a lot of Americans live on what? The coasts, right? But I like to show this map because you have a giant red heartland, a lot of red rural areas, and then the rim, right? I mean, a lot of the rim of this great country is blue. So we are geographically polarized. We are racially polarized. We are politically polarized. Again, all these things do what? Well, they can give rise to conspiracy thinking. And so as I alluded to earlier, I worry about the great middle, which is where most American votes are, that they don't want to participate or they have low information. Conspiracy thinking spreads as the parties pull apart. And, and gosh, look at some of our city council meetings, school board meetings, right? I'm working on a paper right now that looks at the rise of conspiracy thinking in county commissions and city council meetings. He's a doctoral student, at Valdosta State University. We have a doctorate in public administration, and I'm the conspiracy theory guy. I mean, that's probably not good, right? You probably don't want your academic label to be, oh yeah, go see LaPlant. He's the conspiracy theory guy. But this is a city manager, and I think he's got a great topic, right? What in the world is going on with conspiracy thinking rising among city councils, school boards, county commissions? So it's evident. I mean, again, I know I state the obvious to some degree. It's evident at all levels of society. And then I don't have a slide on populism. I'm going to come right back to this, but populism, right? The belief that, we got to look out for the little guy or little gal. That sounded sexist. The little person. We got to look out for the working class person. And there are capitalistic or elite interests or global interests that work against us. Well, on the left wing, and this is important. So, I mean, Bernie Sanders maybe comes to mind as populism on the left wing. Donald Trump has masterfully articulated populism on the right wing. But here's the deal. I don't care where it comes from, left or right. Populism can also fuel what? It can also fuel conspiracy thinking. It can also fuel this idea of a conspiratorial cabal is working against us. I wanted to share this for some of you. You may remember some of the conspiracy theories from the 1980s. I mean, this is when I was in college. And so this is from one of the earliest studies on conspiracy thinking in the United States. So so what does survey research tell us? So as a political scientist, what does survey research tell us? Well, this is a study that looked at conspiracy thinking in the 1980s. In fact, oh my gosh, one of the most fascinating conspiracy theories, number 8, that Ronald Reagan and George Bush conspired with Iran so that the American hostages would not be released until after the 1980 election, or the FBI was involved in the assassination of Martin Luther King. That's really more 1960s. If you look at conspiracy theory 3, the AIDS virus was deliberately created in a government laboratory, or the government deliberately spread the AIDS virus in the homosexual community. I mean, these were popular conspiracy theories in the 1980s. And our standard survey question is, well, do you think this conspiracy theory is definitely true? Probably true? You don't know. Probably false or definitely false. So that's kind of the scale that we use. And what I wanted to, let me go back to this. So I tell my students, well, the idea that the government created COVID and then released it, right? Nothing is new about that. I mean, I tell my students, oh my gosh, when I was in college and we're reading about the AIDS epidemic and it seemed terrifying and people were like, what in the world is going on, right? A popular conspiracy theory was, oh, that was cooked up in a government lab. That was cooked up in a government lab and then intentionally released. So, 40 years before the pandemic, we had similar conspiracy theories about AIDS. Well, all of this comes from Ted Goertzel, who I cite there in his 1994 study. But what I like about this path analysis is that Dr. Goertzel says, look, minority status, for a variety of reasons, often in the African American community, but minority status can be a powerful positive predictor of belief in conspiracy theories. So can anomia, right? This feeling of isolation, right? This feeling of being isolated, disengaged. We certainly saw that in the pandemic. That can be another predictor of the belief in conspiracies. And then interpersonal trust, right? So the higher levels that you have of interpersonal trust, the less likely you are to believe in conspiracy theories. So anomia is a positive predictor of belief in conspiracy theories, but interpersonal trust can help to drive down belief in conspiracy theories. If you trust your family, your neighbors, your friends, some of you might say, I don't trust my neighbors, I don't trust my friends, and I don't trust my family. No, I hope that's not your view, but if it is, you might be likely to believe in conspiracy theories. What kind of compounds this is not only is minority status a positive predictor of belief in conspiracy theories, it's also associated with higher levels of anomia and then lower levels of interpersonal trust, right? So that almost becomes a triple whammy in predicting belief in conspiracies. Now, a more recent study, so that was Goertzel's classic study in the 1980s. And also I went through that pretty quickly, but do you remember the conspiracy theory from the 1980s that the CIA was dealing cocaine in American cities, that the CIA was basically in the drug running business. Well, again, that was a very popular conspiracy theory in the 1980s that I hear my students still echo, right? This belief that the government or the CIA is drug running in American cities. Now, has the CIA had some connections to drug running, or maybe turned the blind eye towards drug running? Well, we can discuss that. A more contemporary look at conspiracy theories, right, would say, well, 9/11 was planned by the government. We talked about that earlier. Remember the birther? I say remember, it's not like it's totally gone away, but the birther conspiracy theory that Barack Obama was not really born in the United States and does not have an authentic Hawaiian birth certificate. One of my favorite parts of this conspiracy theory is that when we ask people, is Hawaii part of the United States? In some surveys, 10% of people will say, no, Hawaii is not part of the United States, or 10% will say, I don't know if Hawaii is part of the United States. So my joke is, well, if you think Barack Obama was born in Hawaii, or you heard that Barack Obama was born in Hawaii, and you don't know if Hawaii is part of the United States, maybe that lends to your belief in that crazy conspiracy theory. George Soros, right? The billionaire George Soros, who has done so much for democratization in Central and Eastern Europe. I mean, I still hear him being cited as being behind caravans of people coming from Central America, or being behind waves of immigration. So George Soros is a common character, if you will, in conspiracy theories. Chemtrails, this maybe is my favorite conspiracy theory of all time, that the contrails, right? The contrails that planes leave in the sky, which are quite beautiful. Well, that's not vapor. That's actually what? Those are chemicals being sprayed upon you for mind control purposes. So chemtrails is a fascinating conspiracy theory, which you could argue almost dates back to the fluoride conspiracy theories of the 1950s, that water was fluoridated to do what? Make your mind soft and make you susceptible towards communism, right? I mean, that was a very popular conspiracy theory in the 1950s. So again, when we look at these conspiracy theories, and this is from Oliver and Wood's study about 10 years ago, and these are actually regression coefficients, but I wanted to highlight for you in purple or fuchsia, whatever color we want to call it. In purple or fuchsia, one of the strongest predictors of belief in conspiracy theories that 9/11 was an inside job, Barack Obama was not born in this country. Oh, the Iraq War was, of course, a giant lie to you. You were manipulated into war by international forces. One of the strongest predictors is that purple highlight, which is what? End of times. And I find this fascinating, right? So a belief that we are in the end of times. And again, I love my mother because she's my mother, but my mom will be, Jamie, we are in the end of days. I'm like, well, Mom, I'm a little more optimistic. She goes, oh no, Jamie, these are the end of times. I'm like, well, Mom, you're watching too much TV or something. I don't know what you're doing. Too much Law and Order. I'm not sure what it is, but I don't think we're in the end of times. But really, a belief that we are in the end of days, if you will, end of times. Oh my gosh, that can be a strong predictor. I mean, probably makes sense to everybody. The yellow highlight, if you believe in a secret cabal, right, that politics is largely defined by small groups of people who meet in secret. Well, of course, that predicts conspiracy thinking. And then blue, the light blue is interesting, Manichaean tendencies. So this is interesting. Do you believe that the world is basically good versus evil, right? Do you believe, or do you, I mean, because if you see the world as a lot of gray, you're probably more skeptical of conspiracy theories. But I find that is this interesting. A belief in the end of times or end of days, and then this belief in Manichaean tendencies that, right, we can really frame things as good versus evil. That can be a very powerful predictor of conspiracy thinking. So that, and again, those are not the only two surveys. There's a whole catalog of surveys on that, but those are two I wanted to highlight. I also wanted to share, well, what does political psychology teach us about conspiracy thinking? So what does experimental research teach us? And I don't know, my students enjoy this example because it resonates with them. There was an exam day experiment. So we surveyed, I say we, this was not my study. I was not part of it. This was in Rob Brotherton's Suspicious Mind. So if I might recommend one book to you after this lecture, Rob Brotherton's Suspicious Minds is a great analysis of why we believe in conspiracy theories. And it's a really cool analysis of conspiracy theories from the Roman Empire to today. But so when we survey students on exam day, they are far more likely to believe in conspiracy theories, contemporary conspiracy theories, than on a regular old day, right? So if it's a day where I'm just giving a lecture or they're doing a group project, I'm not going to see terribly high belief in conspiracy theories, or whatever level of conspiracy theories I see. If I survey students on an exam day, it is dramatically higher. Again, I think this is important. It may seem self-obvious, but it shows the role of stress and anxiety, right? That if you're stressed out, if you're anxious, it leads to what? Greater belief in conspiracy theories. Maybe my favorite experiment, and you'll see I gave you a little cute bunny and then a giant intimidating bear who is standing on his back feet, just because that's as sophisticated as I get with my PowerPoint. So nonetheless, you have a bunny in front of you and a giant bear rearing up on his back feet. What this experiment did, and again, I just kind of find it clever, kind of interesting. So respondents were told about a disease outbreak at a zoo. Okay. When they were told that the disease killed most of the animals, and that's kind of sad if you go to the zoo, like see the zoo animals, when told that the disease killed most of the animals at the zoo, respondents were more likely to attribute the cause to a newly obtained, fully grown bear rather than a recently obtained bunny rabbit. That, right? I mean, clearly that bear brought some kind of virus, brought some kind of killer virus. When respondents were told that the disease was quickly brought under control by the zoo animals and only a few unlucky animals died, like maybe only like a little hamster died, or maybe like one little snake died. I mean, those are not the examples they gave, but respondents were more likely to view the culprit as a bunny rabbit. What amuses me about this study, or at least intrigues me about this study, is that look, what's the lesson? Size matters, right? I mean, the scope of death, the scope of the crisis can often be a pretty powerful predictor of belief in conspiracy theories. Like, let's take the pandemic. If no one had died from the pandemic, or the numbers were really small, of course, by the way, that's another whole conspiracy theory, right? There's a conspiracy theory out there that not that many people died, that we were lied to, people died of other causes, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. But, if the pandemic had not killed any people, or maybe it was just a small number, would we have had the number of conspiracy theories that we did? But given the cost of the pandemic, right? Not only in human lives, but also in just the social isolation, the mental health issues that we're still struggling with, right? It's the bear, right? It's that bear, and you're going to attribute greater conspiracy theories to the greater the crisis, or the greater the issue. Some research. So, that's a little bit of what survey research can teach us, what experimental research can teach us. I was going to share with you some research that actually I'm doing right now with some colleagues in the Czech Republic and Poland. So last year, we surveyed about 1,000 respondents in the Czech Republic and Poland, asking them about kind of classic conspiracy theories, but then also pandemic-related conspiracy theories, some of the conspiracy theories I've been covering with you tonight. Well, we were interested in, okay, right, these are relatively new democracies in Poland and the Czech Republic, right, coming out of control and domination by the Soviet Union over 30 years ago. And so does their profile of belief in conspiracy thinking look like the United States? Yes. Right. I mean, we see a prevalence and a belief in conspiracy thinking like the United States. Part of my joke is that we export McDonald's, Taco Bell, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and also conspiracy theories, right? That one of the things we seem to be pretty good at is exporting conspiracy theories. But this is just kind of a basic regression model. This is an ordinary least squares regression model. Some of you may be familiar with. And so we were predicting that there was a scale on belief in conspiracy theories. So the higher the score, the more likely you are to believe in conspiracy theories. The lower the score, the less likely you are to believe. So we looked at some controls for gender, age, college educated. For gender, the only gender differences we found were belief in pandemic conspiracy theories in the Czech Republic, that actually women were more likely to believe in conspiracy theories about the Czech Republic about the pandemic. The literature actually finds men are dramatically more likely to believe in conspiracy theories about the pandemic than women. We found the opposite in the case of the Czech Republic, whatever that means. Probably doesn't surprise you, right? As college education goes up, conspiracy thinking belief goes down, although it's not always true. I mean, for example, there are studies in the United States that find little to no relationship between college education and conspiracy belief. And I will say this, some of the most adamant conspiracy theorists I've met in my life are pretty well educated. I mean, not only do they have a college degree, they might even have a graduate degree. So there's actually some fascinating research that income, because it used to be, well, higher levels of education, higher levels of income, those are buffers against conspiracy thinking. Well, it's not always true. Now, in these countries, higher college educated, and by the way, their levels of college education are not at our levels, but nonetheless, college education decreases it. What we did find is kind of in the middle of that chart, distrust in government, as you would expect, higher levels of distrust in government, higher levels of belief in conspiracy thinking. But here's what I find interesting, that for those who believe that life is decided by a higher force, right? So for those people who believe in destiny, or they believe in angels, demons, God, so forth, we do see a higher belief in conspiracy thinking. One of the most powerful beliefs, though, is little control over your life. And to me, this is a huge psychological predictor, right? So if you feel, oh, I feel so helpless. I mean, I feel like I don't control anything in my life. I feel like I'm in a raft with like Tom Hanks, if you remember the movie Castaway. And so I just feel adrift in the ocean. This sense of having little control over your life is a huge predictor in all cases of conspiracy thinking. Yes, Dr. Hajati, my friend.
I'm sorry, I raised my hand too early. Sorry about that. I should wait.
That's okay. I just thought you might have a powerful question on helplessness or life.
Normally,
higher force. I'm just kidding.
Normally we wait till the end of the speaker's talk. Thank you.
Oh, sure, no problem. And then, folks, I wanted to say, so it's interesting again. And like I said, this was a study last year in the Czech Republic and Poland. So college educated helps to dampen conspiracy thinking. Distrusting government, big positive predictor. Life, and life decided by a higher force. You know, it's not always religious. It could be kind of a destiny type of view. If you feel helpless in life, a lot of us felt that way during the pandemic. That's a big predictor. If you are uncertain of your place in the world, interesting that this had no relationship with conspiracy thinking in the Czech Republic and Poland. Studies in this country, studies in the United States during the pandemic found that this uncertainty, right? You just feel great uncertainty about your place in the world or in the future. That can be a powerful predictor. Well, we didn't find it here. I will note that at the very end, what was another very powerful predictor? Populism, right? So a belief or attitudes towards populism, right? That politics is defined by the little guy, right? It's the little guy fighting against corporate interest or governmental interests or fighting against capitalist interests. That, again, the stronger the beliefs in populism among our Czech respondents and Polish respondents indicated higher levels of belief in conspiracy thinking. And just to be a nerd on this, the model performs pretty well with general conspiracy theories in the Czech Republic. We explain about half the variance in the model. For a belief in general conspiracy theories in Poland or pandemic conspiracies in the Czech Republic, we explain about a third of the variance. We don't do very well with pandemic conspiracy theories in Poland. The model only explains about 10% of that model. So what can we do, right? I mean, I didn't want to end with, oh my gosh, it's doom and gloom and we are awash in conspiracy theories. There's nothing we can do. Well, there are, right? I mean, I would argue that this association itself, the fact that you gather for lectures, discussions, debates, I mean, I didn't list that on here. I should have, right? But community. I mean, building a sense of community among scholars here today, or remember neighborhood associations? Do we still have those? I'm in one, but neighborhood associations matter. I mean, I kid you not, right? As we build community, especially coming out of the pandemic, that's a great buffer. It is an antidote, right, to conspiracy thinking. Well, combating misinformation and disinformation, you might recall that Twitter and other platforms, Facebook, were doing more to combat misinformation and disinformation a few years ago. Not as much now, but that can play a role. Information literacy, and this is where I think for the scholars in this group, right, for those that are teaching, or for those that are retired teachers, right? What you do in terms of teaching information literacy skills and critical thinking skills have never been more important, right? They have never been more essential. In fact, there's in my role as president of the Council on Undergraduate Research, one of the position papers we just put together was, folks, given all the challenges, conspiracy theories are at every level of government. We are awash in misinformation and disinformation. Distrust in science is on the rise. Well, you know what the answer is? Rebuilding our inquiry-based society. And whether that's faculty, whether that's teachers, whether that's scientists in the public or private sector, it's our undergraduate researchers, right, who will be the future leaders of this country. But my friends, if we can and we will rebuild our inquiry-based society, that very much gives me hope. So again, it's building community. It's combating misinformation and disinformation, teaching information literacy skills, addressing social isolation. I mean, that relates to my point on community. And then this does not happen overnight. I'm not naive, but bridging polarization, right? If we can find a way for more overlap of the parties than a great yawning distance, bridging polarization and rising above populism are some of the solutions that I would offer you as I draw to a conclusion. And a movie, I'm not sure if you've seen it. That could be your homework this weekend. Well, it's not that great of a movie. I'm not sure I'd recommend it, but don't look up if you've seen that movie. It is a biting satire. It is a biting satire about, I believe it's what, a meteorite that is headed towards the United States. We're facing extinction, and conspiracy theories and how the media covers it. It's a pretty biting critique of our society. So don't look up. If you want to see those contrails in the sky, and they are beautiful on a beautiful blue sky day with very few clouds, you might think those are chemtrails, but they're not. There's a rational scientific explanation for the vapor trails that are created in the wake of the plane. So I will say this to wrap up, that while I offer solutions, right? I mean, I think there are ways that we can rebuild our inquiry-based society and fight against polarization, bargain, compromise, negotiate. I think we would all agree that conspiracy theories are not going away anytime soon. I can probably continue to teach this class till I'm 100 years old, although my students probably do not need to see me at 100 years old. But my point is, this class, I think, can be taught as long as I wish to teach it, or other scholars, because what? This has been around since the ancient Egyptians. Well, it's probably been around since the days of our earliest cave people and mysticism, right? But it's been around since our earliest of civilizations. It's not going anywhere. But again, this toxic brew of all the things that are mixing today: conspiracy thinking, distrust in science, polarization, populism. It gives all of us pause, but there are ways that I think each and every one of us can make a difference. So I appreciate your attention. I'm so very grateful for the invitation. And at this stage, I'm excited to just kind of open it up for your comments, your observations, because I always learn from your observations. So